There'll be a bit of frustration about this too. I suspect there's another warning from Eskom, our friends at Eskom, about the potential of stage 2 load shedding this afternoon. The power utility, it says struggling power utility in my script, I think that's correct, says its power generation continues to be severely constrained due to the breakdowns at 3 power stations. It says that the delayed return to service at some of the units at Hendrina, Kusile and Arnott is what's causing the problem. They're asking you to use electricity sparingly, if you have it. I don't know if you've ever looked at the fine print in your electricity bill, but even the fine print or the fine print in your prepaid electricity system, the print can be very small. It may even be more complicated than the documents you sign when you get a new cell phone. Well, now the system that Eskom uses to determine how much to charge you is going to change. Eskom submitted what's called its new tariff structure to the energy regulator, NERSA. Shirley Salvodi is the Eskom corporate specialist in retail pricing. Shirley, good afternoon to you. What is going to change? What kind of tariff structure have you now created?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Good afternoon to your listeners. Well, tariffs are made up of different components. So if you just think of your cell phone bill, you might have a fixed charge, you might have your usage charge, or you might just have usage charges. What Eskom is doing is we're going to take our tariffs and in particular our residential tariffs, we're going to split them up. So we're going to separate out costs that are sort of hidden in the energy charges and pull them out and bring them as fixed charges. And we are doing this. Most of our other tariffs already have fixed charges that are more or less cost reflective, but we're doing a little bit of rebalancing with some of our charges and, like I said, making things more cost reflective, reflecting the different services that we provide. Because Eskom is not just a generating company. It produces energy, it produces networks, it has capacity in its power stations, and all of those are different services that we provide, and we just want to reflect that in our tariff.
So the way I would consume electricity is I would switch on the light, and I'd want to know how much it costs me to keep that light on for, let's just say, an hour, right? Now, the way I see that is that I only see that as an energy charge. And yet to keep that light going for an hour, I also need cable that goes to my house that needs to be maintained. How do you separate them out? I'm used to just paying one charge. My light goes on for an hour. That's how much it charges me. How do you get the network charge out of how much it's cost me to keep that light on for an hour?
So when the regulator makes a decision, they make a decision actually based on the different Eskom divisions, so generation, transmission, and distribution. Transmission is a wires business, the cables and the networks and the pylons, and so is distribution, mainly a wires business with a retail function. And how we do this is we as Eskom Distribution buy energy at the transmission level. At transmission level, there's a structure of how we purchase that energy. It's made up of Eskom generation costs plus RPPs. Then the transmission also has a tariff, which we also buy those services. And then on the distribution side, we do what is called a detailed cost to serve, which it looks at every customer on the network, where they're situated, what their voltage is, and we work out based on the assets used to serve those customers the network charges or the network costs, because we don't necessarily pass the network costs as is. We try and make some of it variable and some of it fixed.
One of the things that you've done for many years and that people try and do is that the more you use, the more you pay per unit. And the reason you do that is to try and make sure that people who use more tend to be richer, and so you can use that to subsidize the people who use less, who tend to be poorer. Are you still going to be doing that in this new tariff structure?
So we want to move away from having what is called the inclining block tariff for residential. It's a very unpopular tariff. People find it difficult to understand that I go and I pay 100 Rand, I get so many kilowatt hours, let's say 100 kilowatt hours, and then I pay 100 Rand and only get 50 kilowatt hours. So that is really the principle of the inclining block rate. The unfortunate thing with an inclining block rate, especially the high block, is that we've got other costs included in there, like network costs. So this high block rate also provides an uneconomic signal because it's not really reflecting your fixed costs. And if you decide now to reduce your consumption, what happens is you now start to get subsidized. So in theory, you can end up with the rich being subsidized by the poor if you don't structure your tariffs correctly. And this is not a unique thing for Eskom or for actually the electricity industry. Many municipalities are also trying to do the same thing. And also internationally, there's a lot of debate on how to unpack these charges so that you send the right economic signals. So what we are wanting to do is pull out some of those costs, those fixed costs, out of the energy rates and create them as a fixed charge.
So when I switch my light on for an hour and it costs me, let's just say for argument's sake, R1, it's just a nice round figure. I'm sure it costs a lot less than that. But if I have my light on for an hour, I know that that's what it costs and that Eskom charges me that because you need to get the cost back of what it costs you to keep my light on for an hour. So you need to maintain the network, which we've discussed. You need to pay for the coal or the solar or the actual energy that's being used to generate that electricity. But at the same time, you can also use that tariff to change my behavior. So you could charge me a different rate at a different time to make me switch my light on at a different time. To put it, maybe a better example, is to say, to encourage me to go home and switch off my geyser between 4 and 10 every night so that I use a lot less electricity, you could charge me a different rate at that time. Are you going to try and influence our behavior with the new tariff structure?
Yes, so we want to introduce, obviously subject to the regulator approving it, a residential time of use tariff. We already have time of use tariff for about 80% of our sales. A very large majority of that is actually to municipalities. They themselves don't necessarily have time of use tariffs to their customers. So yes, that's exactly the incentive we want to give customers, that if you use in peak, it's going to be more expensive, but if you use in off-peak, so for example, let's say you have solar, you can charge your batteries, and then in the peak time, use your batteries instead of drawing from the grid, and then in the off-peak times, also charge your batteries. So this just adds to overall reducing the system costs, because really it's residential customers that are causing the big peaks in the system. And anything that can be done to assist in the peaks helps everybody. So yes, we're definitely proposing it. It's not going to be mandatory for customers unless you go to solar, but the charges, whether you not on the time of use tariff, your fixed charges, or if you on what we're calling home flex, is exactly the same. So we're not charging customers any more. It's just the one tariff. The energy charge is now split into time of use rates.
So Shirley, in a way, I'm not disputing what you're doing, and I'm not disputing the need to do it. It's been 10 years since you last did it, so you have to do it. But this could be quite contentious. Now, I want to know if my bill's going to go up or down, and electricity is a strange thing, so my bill could even go sideways. I don't know. How can I work that out?
So, yes, this is an issue. Some customers are going to pay more, and some are going to pay less. What we are going to do, hopefully by the end of this week, we will be putting models on our website. It's www.eskom.co.za/tariffs, and you would be able to go and look at your bill and put your consumption in. I do want to just mention that this is for customers supplied by Eskom, not for municipalities. So we are obviously hoping what we try and do with Eskom, municipalities have their own mandates and they would need to make decisions whether they want to sort of replicate this to their customers.
I remember reading somewhere once that there's something like over 200 different tariff structures to supply electricity in South Africa. A lot of those will be councils. I do want to ask, though, for people who are supplied by Eskom, will you pay the same no matter where you are in the country? Will it be the same tariff structure if you're in Sandton, which I actually think is an Eskom area, or if you're in Kuruman?
Yes, so if you supply by Eskom and you, what we call small power tariffs, it's exactly the same throughout the country. If you're on a larger power tariff, we have a slightly different zone We have transmission zones, and depending what transmission zone you are, your rate could be slightly different. The structure is the same. It's just we have to account for losses. So if you're further away, in Cape Town, for example, you'll pay a slightly higher rate than somebody in Gauteng. But yes, in Sandton, the tariffs are the same as in Kuruman. We do have two options for residential customers. One is called Home Power, that is for more suburban, higher consumption customers. And then there's another tariff called Home Light, which is for really low consumption customers, typically those that was done through our electrification program, and that tariff is subsidized.
Shirley, look, I'm always happy to hear that Cape Town's going to have to pay more for something, but does that mean that the cheapest power in the country is going to be in Mpumalanga?
Well, yes, the Gauteng area is for large power customers, the Gauteng area has the lowest rates. For small power users, it's the same throughout the country.
Shirley Salvodi, thank you very much. Indeed, an Eskom corporate specialist in retail pricing. It's a complex issue. There's a lot to it. It's going to have a direct impact on your life. And yes, I don't know how an electricity bill can go sideways either, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. More news in a moment.